Hi, my name is Alex Dolphin, and welcome back to another episode of Ex Ante. Today we're going to discuss the case Revlon versus McAndrews Forbes Holdings. This case was heard in the Delaware Supreme Court in 1986. Let's go ahead and jump into the facts of the case. These are two companies, and this is a proposed merger that's going on. Revlon is a French cosmetics brand headed up by an eccentric CEO, Michel Bergerac. Guy who would roll around in a private jet, had loads of money, kind of did what he wanted to. Big ego type of fellow. And on the other side, M&F, McAndrews Forbes Holdings, M&F, or the specific subsidiary is Pantry Pride that this kind of deal is going through, is headed up by a guy named Ronald Perlman. Ronald Perlman is an American from North Carolina. He is a widely acclaimed investor. Some people would call him a takeover artist. He probably wouldn't like that name, but an investor and also quite a large ego. So these are two kind of big ego guys going at it. Well, McAndrews Forbes, Ronald Perlman, approaches Michel Bergerac and he says, hey, I want to buy your company. I want to buy Revlon out. Ronald Perlman kind of had some things going on with Walmart in the background. Walmart wanted a cosmetics brand, so that's kind of what was driving this deal. But Ronald Perlman says, I want to buy you. Michelle says, no way, we're not selling to you, you American Pantry Pride, crappy business. Revlon is way higher brow than you are. We're not selling to you. Well, Ronald Perlman says, okay, tough. Then we'll just buy your company from your shareholders. So he launches a hostile tender offer campaign. And the price kind of starts to creep up on Revlon. The price goes up as Revlon implements some defensive measures. So Revlon has a highly competent counsel, Marty Lipton of Wachtell Lipton. They go to Marty Lipton and they say, hey, what can we do about this? He says, well, you could do a share repurchase, which they do. So they buy back some shares from the shareholders. This is Revlon. And you could also implement a poison pill. And so they implement a poison pill as well. So some pretty stout defensive measures that are supposed to ward off a hostile takeover. Well, Ronald Perlman, he's not going to stop when he sees the defensive measures. He continues to go forward and tries to get this deal done. And he just keeps raising the price on that tender offer higher and higher and higher. Until eventually it looks like, yeah, you know, this thing started out in the 40s and now here we are in the mid to high 50s per share. And it looks like this deal is going to get done. And so what does Revlon do? Well, they find themselves a white knight. White knight in M&A is a friendly acquirer. So we don't want to sell to Ronald Perlman, but we want to sell to Fortsman. These are nice, civilized folks, not like Ronald Perlman and Pantry Pride. And so they drop some deal terms with Fortsman. And Fortsman says, okay, yeah, we'll do a deal with you. What we're going to do is we're going to require some, like some waivers of the bond contracts and the note holders. So it would impact the value of the bonds is one of the things. They're going to implement some golden parachutes for all the executives. So they're going to buy out Revlon, Fortsman is. And then all of the executives at Revlon are going to get their golden parachutes, which was a sum of money that's thrown their way after the M&A event, and then they're just going to buy their stocks back. We're going to do it for $57.25 per share, which seems like a high value. That actually at that point is beating what Ronald Perlman's highest offer is at that point. And so Revlon says, this sounds great. Let's lock this up. They sign a deal and they go forward. They say, we're selling to Fortsman. We're not selling to Pantry Pride. Sorry, tough. Well, Ronald Perlman doesn't like that, so he sues them. He sues them in Delaware court and says, you've breached your fiduciary duties when you entered into this deal with Fortsman, and you didn't entertain our higher offers. Shortly after, at the lawsuit, after Revlon signs up the deal with Fortsman, M&F, Ronald Perlman, throw another tender offer at $58, so 75 cents higher than what Fortsman was offering at the time. So the question before the court, it's an interesting case because the court is analyzing everything through the Unical defensive measure. But there's a higher overlay to this, which is just the general theory of shareholder maximization, that a board, that duty to maximize shareholder value that the board has, especially when you're in an M&A event. So let's just go ahead and jump into that. So the first thing the court does, it looks at the defensive measures, Justice Moore does. And Justice Moore says the poison pill, this is fine. There was a reasonable threat. The original offer from Ronald Perlman was undervalued. The investment banker said so. And this poison pill is a 20% trigger. It's proportionate to that threat. So this poison pill is going to withstand and survive Unical's scrutiny. Part 2, the repurchase agreement, that second defensive measure. Well, that also survives Unical. And it does so because, yeah, this is just a classic defensive measure. It's nothing crazy. It's nothing out there. It's not disproportionate. It's not unreasonable. You're just buying back shares. And the board has the ability to do that underneath DGCL. So now third is where this case really gets hot. And that's when the court talks about what the Revlon board did when it saw that this company was going to be sold. It saw that the sale was inevitable. There's two bidders going back and forth warring over essentially hostile tender offers straight to the shareholders. And the value is just going up and up. And it looks like the Revlon board knows this is going to be sold. And so what do? They find a white knight, this Forsman company. And so the court says, if you're going to find this white knight, so to speak, that's fine. But you cannot just find this white knight to basically deal with someone that you don't want to deal with, i.e. Ronald Perlman. You have to find the person that's going to provide the most value for the shareholders in the deal. And in that case, this would have actually been Ronald Perlman. He was going to provide more value per share. And so let's just dive a little bit more into the weeds. So when the repurchase went through, there was debt issued by the company to repurchase those shares. So there was some things going on when this was going back and forth as far as what was going to happen to that debt in the hostile acquisition by Pantry Pride. And essentially, Forsman said, we'll make sure that that debt trades at par value. We'll make sure that it doesn't get discounted by future debt, which Ronald Perlman obviously wasn't willing to do. This guy is a leveraged artist. He's, leveraged buyouts is the name of the game. So Revlon's arguing, well, you've told us we can consider the whole corporate enterprise, the debt holders, the shareholders, maybe the employees, maybe the community, maybe the environment. And the court says, yeah, generally that's true. You can consider and protect the full corporate enterprise, including, the debt holders. But when we get into a sale, when it looks like it's a hot auction for a company, all of those other interests, those third-party interests, they just go out the window. And we focus on the shareholders. We focus on maximizing the shareholders' value from the deal. And so we don't really care, the court says, we don't really care that Forsman was going to provide a better deal for the note holders. What we do care is that Pantry Pride and Ron Perlman were going to provide the best deal for the equity holders. And that is the key from this case, is that when a company is selling its business, it needs to focus on the equity holders and maximizing the value for the equity holders, even if that's to the detriment of other parties like debt holders, employees possibly, the environment, things like that. And so that's kind of the jumping off for what I kind of want to think about. There's also a no-shop provision, lockup, that the court kind of talks about. What those are, those provisions that prevent the company from being sold further. The court says, if you're going to do that for the primary purpose of entrenching yourself as the board and selling to someone that's friendly instead of maximizing shareholder value, that's a problem. Okay. So back to, this is a really interesting case because it distills down to what is the corporate purpose and what is the purpose of the board in governing this organization. Is it to make sure that the corporate enterprise as a whole functions, right? That employees have jobs, workers have jobs, they have places that they can show up and work to after an M&A event. That the environment is taken care of, that hostile takeovers don't come over and just, bust up a company and cause harm to the environment because maybe the last board was more friendly. It's about, what is this about? And the court says it's about the shareholders. It's about the shareholders' value. And it's really just it's interesting to see that this is how the Delaware courts think about things. And this is called the Revlon doctrine, the Revlon duties of the board. And yeah, you could apply this to certainly a sale of a company, but you could also think more deeply that Revlon is kind of the basis for shareholder maximization in the corporate law. And foundationally, we have a piece of case law that's saying that, yes, it is the duty of the corporate board to maximize shareholder value. If we're in a sale, definitely. If we're not in a sale, it's a little bit more fuzzy. The court says you can maintain and promote the corporate enterprise as a whole rather than just the shareholder value. But really something to think about. What is the purpose of a corporation? Is it to protect the employees, the workers, the community? Or is it just to maximize value for the shareholders? And I think that depending on what you think about economics and the political state of the world, you might come down on very different sides of the scale there. So thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to see more, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye-bye.